We previously dated.
Mr. Howard, let me ask you a question real quick. Is this the place, is this the location where you were when he would show up?
As of the last year or you're saying
Either
20
either time. Has he ever been to this location?
where I'm living now?
Yes, ma'am.
I don't like I was telling the young lady who called me, like I said, this was a while ago. So
You think you've moved since then?
yeah, so like I was telling her, I moved around
Okay,
a lot
so
in
my
between
only
these.
concern is that we may have just given Mr. Addabong information that he didn't have.
He's living out of state, and he's not here. Um, so it's my fault that he's not here, Your Honor. Because had I realized prior, he would have made arrangements to be present in the courtroom.
Okay. We ready, Ms. Williams?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so this is the emergency motion to revoke bond on Killian Vieira Atamong 2022 CR 02372. Mr. Atamong is before the court for battery, family violence, simple battery, family violence, and simple battery. He's represented by Ms. Chelsea Hong of the law firm of Lister, Holt, and Dennis. And the state is represented by Ms. Amira Williams. And Ms. Williams, are you ready to go forward?
Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, can I just
Yes.
put on the record, or to clarify for the record, are these charges that Mr. Addabong is on the calendar for and the bond is being revoked for, are they misdemeanor offenses?
They are currently charged as misdemeanors.
What do you mean? The ones he currently has that I'm dealing with, the 2022?
So, because the reason I asked, Your Honor, and maybe if we need to address this first, I had initially asked for a recommendation from the state on the battery family violence to resolve it so that we did not have to move forward with the motion to revoke bond. Ms. Williams let me know that the case is going to be transferred, but that it has not been transferred yet. So he's in a position where even if the court wanted to consider allowing him to enter a plea, he can't. So the only option would be to move forward with a motion. But she's saying that the state is alleging that they're going to transfer it because it is a felony. So I want to be clear for the record, is he being charged with a felony or a misdemeanor? Is this case a felony or a felony?
Okay, so when I do a bond revocation, it's on the case that's before me because the allegation is that they have gotten additional charges. They've had a new case involving violence, or a new case involving violence of the same person where they have violated a bond condition. So I don't care about the second case other than those three reasons. Is it a new case? Did he violate the law? Is he alleged to have violated the law again? Is he alleged to have broken the bond conditions? Is he alleged to have had contact that was not sanctioned by the court with the victim in the previous case? Those three things are what I care about. Whether his next case is a felony, well, that's Mr. Addabong. If he decides to go out and start doing things that get the attention of the police and he racks up several cases, well, I don't feel a whole lot of sympathy for Mr. Addabong.
And Your Honor, to clarify, what I mean is that is the 2022 CR 02372 case, the battery family violence, is that what he's being charged with? That's what we're revoking the bond on.
Because if it's a misdemeanor and it's before me, I can revoke the bond if he has any subsequent cases. Are you saying that this one is a felony because he has one before this?
No,
Your Honor, this is my first time.
Hush, Mr. Addabong.
Please do not say anything, Your Honor. So what I'm clarifying is that if this case that they're revoking the bond on, this battery family violence,
which would be any case subsequent to this 2022 case I'm dealing with.
Correct, Your Honor. So if my thought, and this is what I always do, if Mr. Addabong wants to resolve the battery family violence, that case is closed. And therefore, if he wanted to resolve, or if the court would be willing to hear a plea of guilty on the battery family violence, that case would be closed and then he can handle a subsequent case. That option seems to not be even on the table.
Well, I mean,
transferring it. So
I don't know that they're required to give you that option, Ms. Hahn. Here's the thing. If he has a case pending before me and it's a misdemeanor, it can be resolved. If he gets a subsequent case that it generally should be a felony based on the statute, then he can resolve the misdemeanor case in front of me, but they're not required to give him a global offer that resolves the case that is likely to be a felony. All things can be true at once.
No, Your Honor. So if I'm not worried about the second case. I just want to be able to resolve the first case. So even if we need to enter a non-negotiated plea, that would be preferable to moving forward with a bond revocation hearing. But if the court's position is that the battery family violence is still before the court, it still is a misdemeanor, then we can entertain a non-negotiated plea to the battery family violence.
All right. Go ahead, Ms. Williams.
So the state's current position is that the case is being reviewed for whether or not there are felony charges to be either accused by the DA's office or indicted by a grand jury.
Mm-hmm.
As it stands right now, Mr. Addabong did come before the court on February
I need
20th.
hold on just a second. I need about 5 minutes. Hold on.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you. Ms. Williams, go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. Presently, the state's position is that there is a potential for felony charges in this case. We do not have jurisdiction to charge or indict any felonies. This is hence why it's being reviewed. However, despite what the state is currently doing, the defendant also is under order of the court to refrain from committing any new crimes while on bond, having contact with the victim, and returning to locations prohibited by his bond conditions. And it is the state's position that the defense is attempting to circumvent the process by trying to force us to enter into a plea agreement in order to resolve his case before it has a chance to be reviewed by the DA's office, in which they would then be precluded from charging a felony if they so choose based on these facts and circumstances, because due to double jeopardy. It's a state's position that, one, the state is not required to offer a plea agreement first. Secondly, the trial court is not required to accept a plea. They are only required to ensure that the defendant's rights are not being trampled on, and that his constitutional right to a jury trial is being honored, should he so choose. And what I would also do is cite to Harris v. State 175, Georgia App 134, to which the Court of Appeals held explicitly that it is within the discretion of the trial court to accept or reject a plea of guilty, and the defendant is not entitled to have a guilty plea as a matter of right, which is also well-settled case law within Strickland v. State. And furthermore, because the case is still pending before this court, Your Honor has the authority and the jurisdiction to hear a motion on a bond revocation based on current violations of said bond conditions. And if the defendant wishes to appeal, they do have the right to request a certificate of review, or in the opposition, if the court denies that certificate, a habeas corpus petition. So we would submit that we can't proceed forward with the bond revocation based on the fact that the state is not intending to offer Mr. Aderbong a plea deal in this case until the DA's office has had an opportunity to determine if they want to proceed forward with felony charges for the same set of circumstances that were presented here. And it was the state's understanding that Mr. Aderbong also refused the state's original offer when he was here for calendar call back in February. And so it's our intention to proceed forward with the trial should the DA's office uh, refuse to file charges.
Well, it is the courts. I take very seriously protecting people's rights, but I'm not going to go overboard such that Mr. Aderbong avoids the consequences of his behavior, because, he wants to take a plea now so he can avoid the consequences of having possibly committed a felony. That's not my bailiwick. I have control over the case for 2022. And if he violated his bond conditions or committed another offense while out on bond, then that's something that's within the court's right to address. And it loses its deterrent effect if people just keep going out and committing subsequent offenses and the court does nothing. And so I'm not inclined to entertain a plea to this case. I have set on my calendar an emergency motion for bond revocation, and I'm inclined to hear that. And the fact that Mr. Aderbong is lazing out in his bed or wherever he's lazing out, I'm a little offended by that because he should be in court, but his attorney has taken it upon herself the responsibility for him not being here. But I'm willing to hear the motion to revoke bond. I'm not so willing to hear a plea or to force a plea just because Mr. Aderbong wants to avoid the consequences of his actions.
And Your Honor, just may I place on the record that it's our position, not only our primary argument is not only just about the plea, but it's about the fact that if the state is alleging that this charge is a felony, then that would mean that Superior Court has jurisdiction over all of the proceedings in this case, not the state court. And so it's our position that if it is in reviewing the case is only to discover whether or not it is a felony or a misdemeanor. The commission of the crime, once it is committed, that determines if it is a felony or a misdemeanor.
All right, Ms. Williams, is there a subsequent battery family violence to this case?
Not from a review of his criminal history. The subsequent charges
No,
are
this my first time.
Mr.
This my first.
Aderbong, hush.
Do not say
You
anything.
got a law degree I don't know about.
No, Your Honor, this is
All
my
right,
first.
then.
This is my first
All
time
right, Ms.
committing
Williams.
this crime, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor. So there is no subsequent battery family violence. This would be a first. This isn't a fishing expedition for the state. We're not trying to see if there
Okay,
is
what's
a
the
felony.
basis for the revocation?
The basis for the revocation is that he has alleged to have committed 2 new offenses of criminal trespass out in Union City, Fulton County, against the same victim in this case. And so, based on the facts that we have in the current battery family violence, as well as the factors that potentially could make it a felony, the state's position is that we are concerned for the safety of the victim in this case, as the defendant keeps coming to her place of residence as well as her job, to the point where the police are having to be called, even though the court has explicitly told him he is not to have any contact with her.
Right.
Or to.
So then it's a straight bond revocation. I don't care if at some point down the line it becomes a felony. I don't know that I need to protect him from that. What I need to do is make sure that he has a full and fair hearing on what's before the court. And if he has subsequent charges that mean at a minimum he got arrested for something new while he was out on bond for a case before me, I can address that. At a maximum, if he committed offense with the same alleged victim in the first case, that would require the court to pay attention to that victim's safety, I can address that. And the whole point of having a revocation of bond is not just to punish the fact that he's got subsequent offenses, but the fact is I got to keep A, the community safe, and B, a particular individual safe if he is still having contact with that individual. And I am not inclined to say, well, let's hurry up and take a plea just so he doesn't face the consequences of his hard-headedness.
Your Honor,
So I've had enough on this. The record has been made. Let's proceed to the bond revocation.
The state would call Officer Andre Johnson.
Officer Johnson, may I see you, please? All right. When you're settled, just raise your right hand for me. Do you solemnly swear or affirm any testimony you give in this matter will be true?
Yeah. Yes.
All right. All right, Ms. Williams, your witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon. Can you please state your name for the record?
Officer A. Johnson.
And Officer Johnson, where are you currently employed?
I'm currently employed with the Union City Police Department.
And what are your job duties with Union City?
Patrol my zone, provide safety and security for the residents, take reports, and enforce the laws within my jurisdiction.
And do you recall being dispatched to the address of 5100 High Point
5100 High
Road?
Point Road? Yes, correct.
Okay. And what was that call in reference to?
So the caller, she called that that her, at the time, ex came to her house with uninvited. So that was the initial call. So when we got there, he just said that he was there to get his clothes or and pick up some other stuff, I guess. And at the time, I didn't know who he was or anything like that until, by policy, we have to run everybody that we come across on a 911 call. So
who did you speak with when you got there? Let's start there.
I spoke to him and her.
Okay, and who did you identify them as?
Well, initially what I did was I went to the location where my call was dispatched out of, right? So it was unit, I want to say 52 or 54 or something like that. So like when we got there, he was already by the door. So given ARS, and based and given the information that was provided by dispatch, I'm in contact with him. I asked him his name and stuff like that, and
what was the name that he gave you?
I wasn't finished. And for his ID and stuff like that. So like when we ran him and like checked his history with that address, then it showed that he had an active proximity restriction.
Okay, and what was the name that you had received and ran to see who he was?
I don't exactly remember the particulars of that case, so I don't remember if he gave me like a fake name or not.
Well, do you see the person that you spoke with that day on the call?
Uh, I do.
And can you identify that person, please?
Killian Adabong.
Your Honor, let the record reflect the witness has identified the defendant as the same individual from that call.
Record shall reflect that.
Now, when you spoke with the 911 caller, what did she tell you?
Um, you know, I'm gonna say again, this is 10 months ago, and I don't have so it may be like a little sketchy, but from what I can remember on the call, it was stated that her she said that her ex-boyfriend is at her house now, knocking on the door and won't leave.
And the person that she's named as her ex-boyfriend, was that the same individual that was at her door when you arrived?
Um, not on the call, but once we got everybody identified and and everything, then that's when she confirmed that she doesn't want him there.
So was that the person that the individual that was at the property, that was that the same person that she was referring to?
Yes.
Thank you. No more questions, Your Honor.
All right.
Any questions, Ms. Hahn?
Yes, Your Honor. Officer Johnson, you said that you'd asked my client why he was there, and he said he was there to get clothes, correct?
Pick up Cole's personal belongings or what have you.
Did you ascertain how long he had been at the location?
How long he had been at the location?
Yes, sir.
Um, let's said before, the like this call was last year July, so and I don't have the video currently in front of me or the report, so I can't confirm or deny like anything that.
And when you arrived out to the scene, my client was cooperative with you, correct?
Yeah, of course.
Mhm. And he gave you all of the information that you had asked for?
I mean, like I said before with Miss Williams, I'm not entirely. I don't exactly remember if he did or did not give me false information. But I do recall that we were eventually able to identify who he was.
Did you figure out whether or not he actually did have items inside of the home?
If he actually did, I don't recall that
Okay.
per se.
Um, One moment.
Hey, if y'all can give me a second, I'm actually getting ready to like walk out the door.
I have no further questions for this.
Are you on your phone?
No, I'm actually on my laptop. I'm actually getting ready to walk out the door to go to work actually.
Okay. Anything else, Miss Williams?
No, he can be excused, Your Honor.
I'm sorry.
He can be excused.
Okay, so we don't have anything else, Officer Johnson. You may be excused at this time. Thank you, sir. Be safe.
All right.
And the state's next witness is going to call Miss Mariama Howard.
All right. Ms. Howard?
Yes, Your Honor.
May I see you, please?
Am I being seen?
I do not see you.
I can see
You can't see me?
Oh, I see you now. Thank you.
Okay.
Raise your right hand for me. You solemnly swear or affirm any testimony you give in this matter will be true.
Yes.
All right, you can put your hand down. Your witness, Ms. Williams.
Can you please state your name for the record?
Mariama Howard.
And Miss Howard, where do you live? Where do you currently live? And do you know Killian Audubon?
You said, do I know him?
Yes.
Yes.
And how do you know him?
We previously dated.
Mr. Howard, let me ask you a question real quick. Is this the place, is this the location where you were when he would show up?
As of the last year, or you're saying 20
Either time. Has he ever been to this location?
where I'm living now?
Yes, ma'am.
I don't, like I was telling the young lady who called me, like I said, this was a while ago. So
You think you've moved since then?
yeah, so like I was telling her, I moved around
Okay,
a
so
lot in
my
between
only
these.
concern is that we may have just given Mr. Addabong information that he didn't have by making her say her address. We need to be mindful of that because Mr. Addabong may not be a true stalker, but there are some that we deal with. So we have to be mindful of putting somebody's information out there in case it's something that they don't, is not previously known. But go ahead, Ms. Williams.
Your Honor, if I made the incident location is that address.
Okay,
So
all right,
he already knows where she lives.
okay.
So now Miss Howard, at that address, have you previously called for law enforcement there?
For as in last year?
At any point in time between now and last year, yes, ma'am.
Like I said, before, I don't remember clearly, but I don't know if this wasn't like recent, so it's kind of cloudy for me.
Miss Howard, do you remember having a conversation with me regarding your the 911 call you made on December 15, 2023?
On December 15th?
Yes, ma'am. You remember the conversation we had a couple weeks ago regarding the 911 call you made that day?
Yeah.
And during that conversation, you recall telling me about how Mr. Adelbong showed up to your home.
Yeah, but I don't remember like in full detail of what happened because it was such a long time ago.
I understand, but do you recall the conversation that we had in regard to that incident date?
Yeah, I remember.
Now, do you also remember us speaking about when Mr. Adelbong showed up to your job at the airport?
Yeah, and like I told the young lady who called me, like I didn't feel threatened. I wasn't harmed. Like he didn't physically come up to me and harm me any type of way. It was just like we we passed by each other.
During that incident, uh, do
Ms.
you
Howard,
recall?
what do you do at the airport?
I work for a company that works inside with TSA.
Okay, and So when you're inside with TSA, are you like a vendor or do you work where they're checking their screening in the safety area?
Yeah, I'm in the safety area where they go through screening.
And on that date that Mr. Atabon came, was he also working at the airport?
I was flying
Mr.
back.
No,
Atabon, say one more word and I will mute you permanently. Just one more word. Because when I'm talking to you, I will talk to you. I will say, Mr. Atabon. Until I say that, be quiet. All right, go ahead, ma'am.
yes, ma'am. Like I was saying, I wasn't aware that they were there until I was made aware by the young lady who called me. But when I was working that day, I never like physically saw him where I was working. So like I was telling her, this was like me passing by because I was leaving the airport, getting off of work, going home. So this wasn't something like we had a encounter or we were face to face.
Go ahead, Miss Williams. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine, Your Honor. Miss Howard, the person that came and told you that he was there, you remember telling me that you were under the impression that he was intoxicated when he came up there?
I don't remember, but like I said, when we
Donna, I just want to place
when I when we came when I passed, we were passing by each other. So I don't know if he was inebriated fully or not, but like I said, we were passing by.
Miss
So
Hahn, you had something?
I wasn't really like facing him to
the
tell.
question has already been asked, but I did just want to place an objection on the record to relevance.
Okay, overruled. Go ahead, Miss Williams.
Yeah, and Your Honor, that was my last question for her.
Ms. Hahn, did you have any follow-up questions? I mean, any cross-examination questions for Ms. Howard?
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Howard, you had said that you weren't aware that Mr. Atabon was there until you got a call. Is that correct?
Yeah, I wasn't aware that he was even inside the airport. Like I said, I was working behind with TSA in screening. And when you're behind there, you can't really see like who's who's in the airport or who's not because it's so many people in line. So like I said, I wasn't aware until I was given a call by the young lady from the solicitor's office.
And you don't feel threatened anyway by Mr. Atabon, correct?
No, like I was telling her, no, I don't feel threatened by him at all. Like
And you're not
nothing has happened since, that 2022 incident. I have never been touched by him ever since then.
So no, you said nothing has happened since that 2022 incident. Is that correct?
As far as, yeah, like being physically harmed or threatened or anything like that, no, that hasn't been happening.
Ms. Howard, so at the airport, you said you didn't know anything about him being there. Well, how did the police get called?
See, that's what I'm saying. I don't know because I left. I went home. I didn't call the police. So that had to been something on someone else's occasion because I was leaving. I was getting off work, heading home.
Uh-huh.
I never called.
Is there somebody else that knows Mr. Atabon who works in your area?
No, ma'am. That's why I'm saying I don't know who made the 911 call because it wasn't me.
Okay. All right. Ms. Williams, did you have anything else for Ms. Howard?
I just have one follow-up question, Your Honor. Ms. Howard, during our conversation, you recall telling me that you had to be escorted off the property by law enforcement because the person who called 911 was concerned about your safety?
No, I do not recall that. I was never escorted to premises by the police. I left on my own freely.
No further questions, John.
All right. Anything else, Ms. Hahn? Anything else, Ms. Hahn? You're muted, Ms. Hahn.
I said no further questions, nothing else.
All right, Ms. Howard, you're free to go if you wish to. It's up to you. But no further questions, you're excused. All right, does the state have another witness to present?
Yes, Your Honor. We're calling victim advocate Chandra Hemphill.
All right, Ms. Hemphill, raise your right hand for me. Do you solemnly swear or affirm any testimony you give in this matter will be true? You're muted, ma'am. Can you okay.
Yes,
there.
ma'am.
All right, you can put your hand down. So Ms. Hemphill, Ms. Williams, your witness.
Thank you, Judge. Can you please say your name for the record?
Chandra Hemphill,
And Ms. Hemphill, where are you currently employed?
the Clayton County Solicitor's Office,
And what's your role in the solicitor's office?
Senior Victim Service Advocate.
And what are some of your job duties?
My job duties are to notify the victims of their rights, victims who have cases that have not resolved, to check to see if they have any safety concerns.
And do you follow up with victims throughout the course of the case?
Yes.
And are you familiar with the named victim in Mr. Adelbaum's case?
Yes, ma'am.
And have you spoken with her?
Yes, ma'am.
Have you spoken with other individuals in this case regarding Ms. Howard?
Yes, ma'am.
And who have you spoken to about?
I spoke with Ms. Howard's mother.
Who's her mother?
Her mother, let me get her exact last name. Her mother name is Mrs. Felicia Knox.
Now, when you spoke to Ms. Knox, what was that conversation in regard to?
Ms. Knox contacted me on May the 7th. She advised that she was in fear of her daughter's life. She advised me that she had to come to Georgia she lives in Georgia. She lives about 3 hours away. And she had to come stay with her daughter for a couple of weeks because her daughter was in fear of her life. So she came to provide some type of safety for her daughter, but she couldn't stay that long. So she wanted to follow up with me to see if there was anything that our office could do to maintain her daughter's safety.
And did she inform you as to why she felt her daughter's safety had been compromised?
Yes, she advised that the defendant was in constant contact with her daughter, and her daughter had reached out to the Union City Police Department twice, and that he had showed up at her job completely intoxicated, chasing her through the airport to the point where her daughter's supervisor, had to get involved and have her escorted off the premises.
And in your conversations with the victim, what was she telling you about the contact with the defendant subsequent to this case?
I advised her mother that I could not discuss the case with her in detail, but I would advise of her concerns. And then I followed up with Mrs. Howard on my own, and she did advise the information that was provided to me from her mother was true. She did advise that he had appeared at her job and was chasing her through the airport. She said that he was very intoxicated and she was in fear.
And when can you advise when that conversation with Ms. Howard took place?
Yes, I spoke with Ms. Howard on May the 7th. I spoke with her mother on May the 7th. I followed up with Ms. Howard on the same day, May 7th.
And I also followed up with Ms. Howard again on May the 13th, and her story was still the same.
And is that May of 2024?
Yes, ma'am.
Nothing further at this time, Your Honor.
Cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Hemphill, when you spoke to Ms. Howard's mother, how did you determine how she knew the information that she was relaying to you?
She advised me that she had been here, she had come to her daughter's home and that she was living with her for a couple of weeks. So she advised that that's how she knew of the incidents. And also that her daughter had been contacting her, advising her that she was in fear of her life.
No further questions, Your Honor.
All right. Anything else from the state?
No, Your Honor. State arrest ready for argument.
All right, Ms. Hemphill, you're excused at this time.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Anything from the defense on behalf of Mr. Adabong?
Your Honor, in light of the testimony, can I have just a moment to speak with him?
Okay, you need a breakout room?
Yes, please.
Okay. I'm sorry, you wasn't aware of the testimony that was gonna come out? What Mr. Adabong told you didn't comport? Never mind, don't answer. I'm gonna put you in a breakout room number 1.
Thank you, Your Honor.
With Mr. Adabong.
Your Honor, we're ready to proceed.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, I thought we did not.
He's probably stuck in the breakout room.
I will try to get him.
He's out and she went back in. Lord help him. All right, he's here. All right, how do you want to proceed?
Your Honor, so Mr. Adabong is not going to testify in this hearing, and so we're ready for arguments.
All right, state may begin its argument.
Your Honor, as I realize that the testimony given by the officer and the victim was somewhat contradictory to what has been happening or a little sparse, I would still submit that based on the fact that the defendant was subsequently arrested for being at the victim's home after he was ordered by the court to have no contact with her and to stay away from her, as well as the incident that did take place at the airport, I would submit that the state has shown by a preponderance of the evidence that the defendant is in willful violation of the contact provisions or the bond conditions that were given to him by the magistrate court judge, and that not only has he violated them in such a way that gives the state concern as to the victim's safety, despite what she's saying, but that he is more than likely to continue doing so and has and will further be in violation of those orders, and he's likely to commit new offenses since he's already committed new offenses and is likely to flee the jurisdiction as well, considering that he's not in the state currently. And based on what was presented here in court today, the state would ask that you revoke his bond for violating the contact provision, as well as a provision that he's not to commit any new offenses while out on bond.
Ms. Hahn?
So, Your Honor, I'll start by saying that my client is presumed innocent and that he is not proven that he has committed any new offenses. Simply because the police came out and that he was arrested for a new offense does not mean that he committed a new offense. The essence of a bond is to make sure, yes, that he doesn't commit any new crimes, but in that the alleged victim in the first case is safe. She's testified that she does not feel threatened by him, that she does feel safe. the state has mentioned an incident that took place at the airport. The state's own witness described the incident that took place at the airport as her being at work and him simply being at the airport. I don't believe there was a prohibition from him being at the airport with the intention of traveling. Again, she testified that she did not even realize that he was there until after she was contacted by the victim advocate. Secondly, Ms. Enfield testified for the state that it wasn't necessarily the alleged victim in the first case that had the concerns, but it was her mother. Her mother is not here to testify as to what she told Ms. Hemphill or her view of what happened and their relationship. Again, if we go back to the first incident officer, as Ms. Williams does admit, he seemed a bit incoherent. He did not remember most of what happened that day without Ms. Williams prompting and at times leading him to the answers that they were looking for. He couldn't really even remember the incident at all. But what he did say was that he remembered that my client was not violent and that he did cooperate with law enforcement. Ms. Williams is correct in saying that Mr. Atabong is not currently residing in Georgia, which means that he is not a threat to anybody in Georgia. He obviously will return to court appearances. Again, Your Honor, I fell on my sword about him not being present today, but in the courtroom, but he's appeared here. So he's not a flight risk in the sense that he won't return to court appearances as needed. So we just ask that his bond not be revoked, Your Honor, and we don't believe that he is a danger.
So experience and time have taught me that domestic violence victims will say a lot of things, especially when they're away from the time, from the time in which certain things happen, and from the actual perpetrator. And they'll say a lot of things to smooth things over, or because having been in a relationship with somebody, they have so much regard for them that they don't want anything bad to happen to them, even though based on the testimony that I've heard, the same cannot be said for Mr. Atabong's feelings towards Ms. Howard in this case. So I'm used to victims in domestic violence situations. By the time we get to a hearing or by the time we get to trial, I'm used to them downplaying what happened or saying it didn't happen, or downplaying their level of fear because, you know, they want to believe that the fact that the person is out of the state, or the fact that the person is not present anymore, or the fact that the person hasn't done it for a little while, it means that they won't do it again, and they're always trying to give grace in that situation. However, I understand the dynamics of that, but it doesn't mean that Mr. Atabong didn't do what he did. Every time someone is before me, no matter what plea they give me, if they give me a not guilty plea, and I know that there's going to be some time between the time that their case, that I am seeing them and the time that their case is resolved, I say to them, and I will remind them at subsequent appearances, you have bond conditions. There are people named in your bond condition that you're not to have any contact with. There are also possibly locations that you cannot go to. If you were to go to that location or have contact with those individuals, you could have your bond revoked and spend the remainder of the time in jail until your case is resolved. In addition to that, you could also be charged with additional misdemeanors and or felonies. All of those things could happen. Please be mindful of that. If you do not have a copy of your bond conditions, if you are unaware of what they say, you can go downstairs and get a copy from the first floor clerk's office. And as much as I say this, I still have some individuals who think that they don't have to listen to me. They don't have to listen to the magistrate court judge. The whole point of a bond condition that keeps people separate is to keep the peace, not just physical peace, not just to erase physical violence, but to give peace to those individuals involved in the situation. And even if Miss Howard is now trying to downplay what happened, there's video in the airport. So I'm sure an incident report was made. All of those things can be brought to bear to show Mr. Aderbong's behavior on that day. But if Miss Howard, if her testimony was rebutted by the fact that her mother called with concern for her and had to come stay with her, then that means there's no peace in this situation. And Mr. Aderbong, I don't think that you take me seriously when I say these things, because I know I have told you this. And so at this time, the court is going to revoke your bond. There will be a warrant out for your arrest. You'll be taken into custody as soon as possible. Even if you're in another state, trust me, they can execute the warrant in another state. You will be taken into custody. You will be remanded to the Clayton County Jail until such time as that condition is removed or until such time as that case is resolved. Anything else from the state?
No, Your Honor.
All right. Anything else from the defense?
Your Honor, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
When Mr. Aderbong is brought into custody, it is my understanding that he will be brought into custody on his bond being revoked on a battery family violence. My concern, I guess, kind of a question, kind of a statement. My concern is that what is going to happen, which is what has happened in the past, is that he will get booked into the Clayton County Jail, and he will sit while the case is being reviewed by his office, and then they'll either, and that could be a year, 2 years before they even deal with it, and then it gets sent back down. Whereas if he could have, what trial, whatever, if on this battery family violence, he would have been on the next trial calendar, and he could have. But now that they're transferring,
Ms. Hahn, sorry to interrupt, but you and I have different roles, and you have to zealously advocate for your client, and I get that. But I have the role of having to maintain his rights, maintain the safety of the people in the community, balance those competing interests, his rights versus the safety of Ms. Howard and other members of the community. And in order to do that, I give as much information as I possibly can. I don't let Mr. Aderbong go into this situation unknowing. I don't say, well, your attorney can tell you what could happen. I make sure that I give him clearly enough information so that he is informed of the consequences of any behavior that he might have. And I did that in this case. I promise you, if you go back and look on any of Mr. Aderbong's appearances before me, he got the speech because I give it to everybody who has a battery case. And with that being said, I am devoid of care for how long Mr. Aderbong sits in the Clayton County Jail on this bond revocation. I could give two flips for how long Mr. Aderbong sits in the Clayton County Jail. After he had the battery case before me, and I know I gave him the speech. He had two more incidences where, at least two, these are the two that I know about. These are the two where the police showed up. These are the two that were on record, but I don't in any way think that those were the only two. Even after I gave Mr. Aderbong all of that information, he took it and said, I don't care. So I know you care how long he spends in the Clayton County Jail. I don't care because my care went out the window when I gave him all that information and he refused to take it into account.
Yes, Your Honor, I understand.
So, Mr. Aderbong, you can make arrangements with your attorney to turn yourself in, and she can talk to Clayton County Police and Clayton County Sheriffs and make that happen so that you aren't face down on the concrete somewhere. You can make arrangements to do that, or you can just wait till they pick you up, sir. No guarantees in that situation. But since you didn't listen to me last time, you're not going to listen to me this time. Run if you want to. Hearing is over. I'll sign that order for arrest as soon as I get it.
And Your Honor, if I'm just may add, just to, I guess, alleviate some concern, I've been in the process of trying to get this case transferred.
Ma'am, I'm not concerned about that. That has nothing to do with me. The 2022 case has to do with me until it is taken from me. For now, it is my case. If y'all are shopping this to the DA's office and they decide to take it or they don't decide to take it, not my business. If a transfer order comes through, I will sign it. So it is up to you and Mr. Brooks, the solicitor of Clayton County, because I don't get into other people's business. My business is he didn't pay attention to the bond conditions set in this case. My business is I warned him several times of what the consequences might be, and he decided to do it anyway. And then depended upon Miss Howard to come in here and almost perjure herself to help him out. So no, sir.
Understood,
Ms.
Your Honor.
Williams, you don't have to explain it to me. I don't care. All right, Mr. Adamon, you're excused. I'll be signing the arrest warrant as soon as I get it.
I'll call you Mr. Adamons. You just log off now. Honor, I guess if